Dr. Tannis, will you please share with us? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kim, for that introduction, and good morning to everyone. Thank you, Kim, for asking me to serve as this morning's keynote speaker. Before I begin my remarks, I think it's important that, especially with all that is going on, that we just kind of take a brief moment to pause and reflect on both the impact of the coronavirus for the past couple of months, and of course, the impact of racism for the past hundreds of years, for which, as you all know, we yet are to provide a cure for either one. During my remarks today, and of course, today's sessions, I want you to keep either a child or a group of children in mind that you hold dear to your heart, so that you can help ensure that your child or those children that you have in mind receive the very best care possible during these pandemics and beyond. So I just want to take a moment to just pause. Thank you. Well, it's time to make a lasting change. As you all know, in 1619, more than 20 enslaved Africans were brought to the United States. And what I find very interesting is that, in 1776, the Declaration of our Independence, the second paragraph reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I find it interesting that slavery was still legal during the time that we espoused all men are created equal. It wasn't until 1865, 89 years later, that slavery was abolished. And as you know, based on the 13th Amendment, and for any of you who have not yet seen Ava DuVernay's 13th Amendment documentary, it's a really important one to look at. The 13th Amendment reads that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So you see the connection between who we decided to enslave and, okay, well, we need to abolish this thing. So what do? Okay, well, we'll abolish slavery, but if they are found guilty or even not, once they are arrested, basically, we can actually do something because they have now crossed the line in terms of this criminal life, so to speak. And so, unfortunately, this continues to have led to a disproportionate amount of incarcerated folks who are primarily children of color, adults of color, as you know. Folks who are, for the most part, impoverished, have special needs, and it goes on and on. Some people say that the system is broken. Others say the system is actually working just as it's intended. So why do I start this education conference kind of giving that historical perspective? I think it's very important that we don't just see today or the last 11 days and what's happening with the voices crying out, that we think that this is something new. This is something that even when our country said all men are created equal, it was clear that we were not treated equal or equitably in any way. Frederick Douglass said this best. In 1894, he gave his Blessings of Liberty and Education address in Manassas, Virginia. And he said, if man is without education, he is a poor prisoner without hope. Education means emancipation. It means light and liberty. To deny education to any people, according to Douglass, is one of the greatest crimes against human nature. It is to deny them the means of freedom and the rightful pursuit of happiness, and to defeat their very end of their being. They can neither honor themselves nor their creator. That education piece is really who we are. And for so long, we were denied that, being treated as less than a person. According to Douglas, a person without education is as a poor prisoner without hope. And so it is with that education, we need to help provide hope to our children and to society as a whole. In the late 1960s, my parents actually came to the United States. My family's originally from Trinidad. My mom is of Indian descent, my father of African descent. And my father had been working on like big trucks, and he was an auto mechanic since he was 12. He reached out to a company in New Jersey based on the knowledge he was able to share over the phone. They offered him a position. When they came here to the United States, my dad called the morning that he was supposed to start this new job. They said, absolutely, Phil, come on down. When my father went, they took one look at him, seeing his complexion, and said, oh, actually that job has been filled. But we do have a car wash and you can drive the cars. And so my father, the way he told the story and still tells the story to this day, was like, he's in this new country. The person who dropped him off said that they'll be back in 8 hours. He doesn't really know where he is. So he drives the cars. He drives the cars Monday. He drives the cars Tuesday. Wednesday, they send him up into the ducts, which is like the AC unit, you know, where the air is provided. And they said to him, he needed to clean out the ducts. And when he climbed up the ladder, he said that there was so much dust and dirt and filth that it was almost like it hadn't been cleaned in years. So he climbed down the ladder and he said, you know what, I quit. And so I give that as an example, and I'm happy to say eventually someone gave him a job. His first mechanic position was a man by the name of Bob Rillo, a Caucasian, a male, who is now in his early 90s. My father has now owned his own mechanic shop for the last 40 years. And I was honored even a year ago to meet Bob Rillo, who still said so proudly that he was the first person to give my dad a job. The reason why I share that with you is because my parents, again, this is in the late 1960s. I wasn't around yet, but in the early 70s, realized that, or had a theory, I'll tell you, that although there were many opportunities in the United States, the opportunities really differ depending on what a person looked like or where a person lived. And so they felt like in order for their children to have the opportunities that they left Trinidad to come to the United States for, they needed to send my siblings and me to schools where wealthy white families sent their children to school. They figured that we would at least be in an environment where children were expected to do well and were supported to do well. And so growing up for me, being in Plainfield, New Jersey, where I was born and raised with children who looked very much like me, I realized what I was doing in school was at least a year ahead of where my peers were. And I just couldn't reckon with that. And so at the age of 7, you know, I said, perhaps not in these exact words, but every child deserves a high quality education. And I'm gonna be a teacher here in Plainfield, New Jersey. And I'm gonna make sure that every child is loved, respected, and receives the high quality education they deserve. Again, probably didn't use those exact words, but that is actually what led me to get involved with education. Now, some of you might have a similar story. Some of you may not even be able to imagine what I'm even describing, because that's just not been your experience. You have not been discriminated against or not been looked at a certain way because of your complexion or because of something within your family or within yourself. But what I want you to do today, whether there are similar stories that you have or not, is to think about those marginalized populations over the years. And in any way, if you are able to have an impact, that you resolve today to truly take a stand and make a difference. my commitment to education went beyond even the classroom. I mean, yes, I held high expectations for my students, ensuring that my students were able to read at or above grade level, and just even behaviorally, that I could be used to help teach them how to better manage their anger and other things. We were a family. And so it was in that same way that when I was offered a literacy coordinator position at a school, it was another elementary school, but I was teaching at the #1 out of 10 elementary schools here in Plainfield, New Jersey. And there was this opening at the #10 out of 10 elementary schools. And I still remember my principal was just like, Lynette, like, why would you go there? You know, you want to be #1. You want to be #1. And I said, yes, you're right, Miss McVeigh. I do want to be #1, but I live on that side of Plainfield. And like, what's wrong with like all of our schools being a #1 school? And I left, went to that school with a lot of professional development, a focus on running records and ensuring students were reading at or above grade level. In 1 year, our school went from #10 to #3. And this is during No Child Left Behind days, made adequate yearly progress for the first time ever. By my second year, we became the #1 school, and they held that position for many years to come. It was during that time that I realized, okay, I guess I'm wired for this work. And so I went back to school and then earned a master's degree in educational administration, and then had the opportunity to lead a school in Newark, New Jersey. Again, similar, similar demographics, similar academic needs. The school was not doing well and pretty much had a high, it was toxic, I'll just say that, a high staff turnover rate. But again, with a lot of just love and support, training on running records, even to the board members, so that they understood even the standard that, yes, this is what a kindergartner should be reading, a first grader, second grader on. We actually became the #1 school in the state of New Jersey for the most gains made, had met adequate yearly progress for the first time. And so through those times, I started to realize, oh, okay, this is really what I'm wired to do. And in 2009, I was accepted to the Harvard Graduate School of Education to work on my doctorate. I was actually in the urban superintendent's program because I was being trained to, become a school superintendent to sort of bring excellence to scale. It's one thing to sort of help one school do well, but how do you bring excellence to scale across multiple schools? And so that's what I sought to learn. It was July of 2009 that I started my program there. There were 5 of us in the program. And in one of my first classes, a professor said, for your 25-page research paper, you could research any topic as long as it deals with education. I thought I really didn't know what to actually focus on. No Child Left Behind. I wrote that grant as a principal. That wasn't going to stretch me. But in that moment, I thought about actually Union County Jail in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and Delaney Hall in Newark. These were 2 facilities that I used to visit 3 times a month. I was involved with 2 churches with women's prison ministries. And so it was just a time for us to go sing with the women, pray with the women, sort of encourage them to make better decisions so that their children could be better off. And I thought about those women, and then I was like, wait a minute, what are we doing for kids who are incarcerated? What does their education look like? And it was that question actually that started me on this new path. In my initial research, I couldn't believe that in many facilities, we weren't even offering an educational program for the incarcerated youth. And the teacher and principal in me also, I wanted to look into, well, what are we doing for teachers and principals in these spaces to provide support, working with arguably our most disenfranchised population? And I could not believe that I only came across 2 surveys, just not a whole lot. And again, our incarcerated population are disproportionately children of color, disproportionately children with special needs, disproportionately children of poverty, disproportionately those who identify as LGBTQ plus community. So marginalized youth are being pushed out. And yes, it is an impact in part with the school to prison pipeline. According to the Justice Policy Institute, children who are suspended or expelled are 3 times more likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system. In schools with school resource officers or police officers, those youth are 11 times more likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system. Of course, even within our communities, foster youth are 4 times more likely to be involved with the juvenile justice system. So we know in our classrooms, in our schools, we know the children that we have concerns for, and yet for so many, again, part of the policies that have come down with wanting to, the zero tolerance policies, making sure things were so rigid that we're just pushing them out, but pushing them out and pushing them into our facilities is not an answer. And so I just want to just share with you that, the first paper I wrote about this topic was ensuring our nation's incarcerated youth are not left behind. It was sort of a play on No Child Left Behind. And since then, so I ended up conducting a research study for my dissertation, spending time in facilities in Florida. And there was, as Kim mentioned in the introduction, my book titled Educating Incarcerated Youth, Exploring the Impact of Relationships, Expectations, Resources, and Accountability, looks at those. And that is the work since I graduated in 2013 that I've been using to help support state leaders and even countries outside of the United States. In addition to that, in 2016, I joined the faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I teach a course that I designed titled Educating Incarcerated Youth, Practice, Research, Policy, and Advocacy. I also provide support to school leaders and around just school leadership and literacy, as those are important pieces, I feel like, for children, for us as leaders as well. And so I just wanted to at least share that with you so you kind of have an idea about my journey, and now just connect this to the current pandemic that we are faced with. So, as parents, we wonder, yes, it's one thing for us as parents, if we are educators, right? We might at least have an inkling of how we can help our children. But for the parents who education is not their background, how can we best equip or help them? And so, family members and even friends, as we've had conversations about how to best support them, I have offered to just help them, like, listen, as long as they know how to read, if they're able to read and comprehend at or above grade level, they're good to go. Like, yes, let them continue to do the work that the school is sending, but most importantly, let's make sure that they're reading at or above grade level. And so I just want to share a couple of stats with you. And again, like, if there is any interest that you have of this, like, feel free to reach out to me. I'm also happy to help and serve as a resource in any way. But, just a couple of data points I just want to share with you. According to the American Education Research Association, this is research that was done in 2013, it states that by the end of 3rd grade, a child who is unable to read at or above grade level, they are 4 times less likely to graduate with their peers. When poverty is added to the mix, they are 13 times less likely to graduate. So again, that emphasized the importance of literacy and making sure that children are able to read and comprehend text on grade level. As I shared with you, how I turned around schools as a literacy coordinator, as a principal, was using literacy as the foundation. Again, for hundreds of years, it is something that we were denied. It is something we must use to empower our children and even our adult learners. The other thing I just want to share with you, just 2 additional data points, is based on a study that was done in 1988, just kind of looking at individualized time, independent reading time. It was shown that children who read at least 65 minutes a day independently, they are exposed to almost 4.4 million words in that year, and they end up scoring in the 98th percentile. I'm going to couple that with studies that have been done that shows when children are exposed, so in terms of like word exposure and how do we get children to read and like see these words, when they experience a word on average 12 times, they own that word, right? So yes, we have some learners, they can see a word once and they have it. We have some who might need to see it 30 times before they get it, but they will have it. But on average, it's about 12 times. So I use that research and what I've done even from 25 years ago when I started as a classroom teacher, again, with Marie Clay's work of running records, to work with children to make sure they're reading at or above grade level. And so usually the person is next to me, you know, they've always been to the left of me or to the right of me in the class. But okay, now with coronavirus, what do? We can't allow the learning to stop. And so there was a 5th grader, he's a triplet actually, and he was reading at a level Q, a Fountas and Pinnell level Q, which is like the end of 3rd grade. And after I took the running record with him and just started working on strategies with him just once every 2 weeks. So I just also want to just share with you that this is not a lot of time or a lot of things going on. I just want to share with you, in 4 months and 12 days, Christian is now at a level X, which is the end of 7th grade. Accuracy rate, 97%, and based on the comprehension check, 100%. Zariah, a 2nd grader, she at the end of 2nd grade, you're supposed to be at level N. She was only at an H, which is not even the end of 1st grade. I work with her once a week just because she wants to see me once a week and we work together. But she's now at a, let's see, H-I-J. I just assessed her, she's now at a K. So she has L, M, and N to go. But we have some time and we'll continue to work with her on that. And then lastly, I just want to share with you about Kai. Kai is a kindergartner. He has an IEP, he's autistic, and I work with him just once every 2 weeks, and we've only had 3 sessions. He was reading on level A, level D is the target for the end of 2nd grade. He is already at B, and I'm meeting with him tomorrow, and I'm sure he's gonna be at level C. What parents have been saying is just how much confidence they see in their children. And it's just so exciting to see them so exciting about reading. Today, during the sessions, you're going to hear a lot about other strategies and ways to motivate your learners. And I hope that you really lean in and really take to heart all that's in place. I share those personal examples with you. Also, I just want to emphasize, I do not charge them for that. No one can give me money for that. Why? Because we are all gifted with something. And another way to contribute to our society is to determine our gifts and see how we can continue to give and gift to others. And so I want to encourage you all, like, adopt a reader, whatever you're good at, whatever it is, it's math, it's whatever, like adopt some learners. And in this virtual time, you don't have to worry about traveling somewhere or anything like that. You can help make this happen for the youth that you serve. I just want to sort of close with this. I asked you in the beginning to think about, a child or a group of children that you hold dear to your heart. My hope is that we can incorporate Nelson Mandela's profound words. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which one can use to change our world." It is through education, and I'm so grateful for just the insight that my parents had, for the love they had of God, for the love that they had of education, knowing, or at least even just believing, having a theory of what they felt like they needed to give us. And you know what? No matter what we call the education, whether it's public or private or charter, it doesn't matter what it's called. What matters most is that we give our children the 100% that they deserve. It is going to benefit them, and ultimately it is going to benefit society. Mother Teresa once said that I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. My hope is that from today forward, you all will continue to cast stones across the waters that for so long have needed to change so that we can work together to have a positive impact and make the necessary changes for our world. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That was inspiring. It was encouraging. This is why I wanted you to be our keynote speaker. You did not disappoint. Thank you so much.